Okay. Alright, how are we doing on sound? It looks like Christmas. Okay, what's going on, everybody? So, similar to my last setup, I'm trying to figure out how to best do the camera. So, last time, so you guys can see, I've got like the main camera here in the background, and then I've got the camera here on a tripod this time, so I can actually move it around. So, we'll be able to show different angles when we do this build, so hopefully it'll be more easier to see what I'm doing, particularly when I'm doing stuff in the case. So in this build, we are going to be focusing on this is going to be a gaming centric build versus last time we were building kind of a pseudo workstation, also known as a high-end desktop. High-end desktop, a lot of people who don't know what that is typically reserved for Threadripper or Intel Xeon. Intel doesn't really have an equivalent right now, but there should be something from Intel next year. We'll see. There have been some leaks on that. I've covered that on the channel, but today we're going to be focusing on a gaming-focused build around the Ryzen 7 7800X3D, because this is going to be probably the PC that it depends. I'm probably going to use this one to do game testing and kind of game benchmark videos and reviews and analysis. I've been thinking of doing stuff like that, kind of like what Digital Foundry does, but maybe not as in-depth as Digital Foundry because I'm not as experienced as them. But I was thinking if I need to do something like that, I would need a powerful gaming CPU that I can use at the ready without having to dismantle or tear apart my existing setup. So that's what we're going to go with this. This is going to be an upgrade from a PC that I built last year. So I see a comment, is it a giveaway PC? So unfortunately it's not going to be a giveaway PC. Maybe in the future, if the channel hits like 10K subs or something, if I can get sponsors, then we could do giveaway content, giveaway PC builds on this channel. I really would like to do that. But for right now, this is going to be the main test bench PC. That's going to be what its focused, or what its purpose is. Because right now, I have the stream set up, and that's not supposed to be Threadripper. Right now, it is Threadripper, but it's probably going to become something else. And then Threadripper is going to get moved to doing different types of workloads that was intended for, not just live streaming, because it's completely overkill for live streaming. But something like this could actually be an excellent choice if somebody wanted to do like Twitch streaming or Kick.com or even YouTube streaming. You could use a 7800X3D to do that because most of the encoding is going to be done using the GPU. I'm pointing at a motherboard, but you know, like a GPU, right? Like a GT 1030, or all joking aside, you would use the GPU for the encoding. So we're going to get into that in a little bit. But I do think that right now, if you're interested in upgrading your PC, if your PC is like 3 years old, 5 years old, etc., and you want a gaming-focused PC, the 7800X3D is probably the best choice right now. I think Steve from Gamers Nexus recently did a video talking about best overall CPU. They kind of said this was the best overall. And then also best gaming CPU, they did say this is the best overall as well for that. So I've been thinking about Intel. I may do a PC build showcasing Intel, although my very first PC build video, if you go back and look at my channel, the very first PC build, kind of how to build a PC video that I did, which was a little over a year ago now, that was actually featuring an Intel CPU. So I did that one, and now we've kind of done a lot of Ryzen ones now, and we did Threadripper. So now we're going to be doing a gaming-focused build around the 7800X3D. The GPU is kind of up to the user. So what you want to do is you want to select a solid platform or a foundation for your build so that whatever GPU you want to use, whether it's a GeForce RTX or GTX or Radeon or something, you'd be able to do that without any issues. So I guess let's kind of go over the components, or were there any questions? It's a powerful looking GPU. Oh, this is a powerful looking GPU? This You guys are probably curious as to what this is. So this thing is the Quadro. This is an NVIDIA Quadro professional card. That's what this is. It's a single slot, but it's really old. Really what I would need... well, this is not going to go in the PC, for one thing, just for those that are wondering. This was here because I was going to probably put this in the threadripper, but it's so old, there's really no reason for me to use this. I was just contemplating putting this in the bottom slot because this is an X16. This is full X16 electrical. But yeah, we're probably not going to use this. This is not what you want to pair up with the 7800X 3D. So just for those that are wondering. So for the build itself, we are obviously going to use this CPU. For the motherboard, I have chosen the Gigabyte X670 AORUS Elite. So this is going to be what we're going to be building with. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about why I chose this motherboard, because I think if you're somebody who wants to do primarily gaming, but you also want to have the option to do content creation, particularly live streaming, and if you're actually really serious about live streaming, you're going to want to make sure you pick the correct motherboard and not some RGB, bling, whatever, it looks cool motherboard, because if you really are serious about becoming a large channel on like Twitch, for instance, or Kick, you're going to want to make sure that your motherboard doesn't hinder you in what you may need to do if you want to keep up with the larger channels. What do I mean by that? Well, like let's say you want to cover like games when they first come out, right? Like I'll give you guys a prime example. Recently there was a trailer from Rockstar. Rockstar announced GTA 6. Grand Theft Auto 6 is coming out in 2025. Now, in case people who are watching that did not catch the memo, that is going to come exclusively, timed exclusive to the consoles. Let me repeat that. In 2025, GTA 6 will be PS5 and Xbox Series X, and I guess Series S, exclusive for unknown length of time. So what that means is if you want to be a content creator slash influencer on Twitch or Kick, you're going to need to be able to live stream that game. And if you don't have a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox, you're not going to be able to cover that game when it's brand new on launch day. So you're going to want a motherboard like this that can support a capture card that can capture PS5 or Xbox at 4K 60 frames per second. So that's one of the reasons why I chose this motherboard, because this motherboard can do that, and we'll talk about why in a little bit. So the motherboard choice, a lot of people don't put much thought into the motherboard when they're doing a PC build. So that's one example as to why the motherboard actually matters. And I would go so far as to say that choosing the motherboard is actually more important. It's a more it carries more weight on what motherboard you choose than what graphics card you choose, because you could choose any RTX 4070 or 7800 XT, and other than how they look, they're pretty much all going to be the same. But the motherboard is something that you're going to keep for typically more than one GPU upgrade cycle. So you don't want to limit yourself by cheaping out on the motherboard. Power supply also would make sense. GTA 5 was like that for the console too, but I think it was 2 years exclusive. Yeah, so, okay. So if it's 2 years exclusive, GTA 5 came out on the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360 in 2013. That was 10 years ago. I think the PC version was 2015, if I'm not mistaken. But someone will have to check when it came out. I don't remember. It's been so long. So, anyway, we could be looking at potentially 2 years of waiting around after the console launch. So if GTA 6 comes out in 2025, because we already know that, for the consoles, that means that at the earliest, the PC release will be 2026 if they do a 1 year, like a 12-month exclusivity. But it could be longer. It could be, 18 months, a year and a half, or maybe 2 years. So 2027, GTA 6. So anyway, the point is, for PC, you're going to want to choose a motherboard that can do pretty much anything that you would need it to do. 2015. Okay, see, 2 years. Yeah, so it was 2 years because 2013 was the console release. It's funny because the Digital Foundry guys were joking about like if it comes out on PC in 2027, that's probably when the PlayStation 6 will launch. So there'll be a PlayStation 6 like upgraded edition for the console, and then it won't be until like the PlayStation 7 era where it gets its like ultimate edition, kind of like playing GTA 5 today on the PlayStation 5. Because remember, GTA 5 was designed for the PlayStation 3. So we're talking like PlayStation 3 to PlayStation 5 is the lifespan of GTA 5. So that means GTA 6 is going to be PlayStation 5 to like potentially PlayStation 7. So assuming the consoles like they grow out that long. I mean, assuming we still have consoles like as that many generations. So let me see here. Yeah. So here. So I guess for the build, we got the 7800X 3D. We have the AORUS Elite AX. For the graphics card, I'm going to keep it simple. Now, we could have gone with a 3090 Ti, but to keep things simple for this build, just for demonstration purposes, we are going to be building using a Radeon RX 7900 XT because it uses 2 standard 8-pin power connectors, and the power supply that I'm using is an older ATX 2.0 power supply. It's an 850 watt 80 plus silver from XFX. You can kind of see it down here. So this is what we're going to be using for the power supply. So if I wanted to use one of the 40 series, I'd have to get an adapter or like a native cable, and I don't really want to do that. So we're going to go with the AMD cards for this. What is the best AM5 motherboard for $350? Probably, it's either going to be the Taichi, the B650E Taichi, or the Asus Strix B650E, B650E-E Strix. That one, or the ASRock that I just mentioned. Gigabyte used to have one, which was the B650E AORUS Master, but they have discontinued that motherboard, and I don't know why they never introduced a replacement. But for around $350, you're going to want a motherboard that is either B650E, because it will include the postcode debug LED, or you're going to want the best X670 or X670E that you can get at that price point. The ASRock Steel Legend is really good. This Gigabyte is really good. So, yeah. GTA 5 for $360. You came out 2012 for PS4 and Xbox was 2013. Are you sure about that? I think it was 2013. I mean, you'd have to just check, but I don't think it was 2012 for PS3. I think it was 2013 for PS3 and Xbox 360, because you have to remember PlayStation 4 did not launch until like November of 2013. It was like at the end of 2013 was when the PS4 launched. So I think the GTA 5 PS4 edition was either like 2014 or it maybe launched with the PC one in 2015. Okay, so let's kind of go over the motherboard real quick. Where is my... Here it is. Oh wait, I have to get rid of the other camera. Okay, so this is the motherboard. So for those that are curious, I want to go and make sure you're on the latest BIOS when you're doing a PC build. But this is what we're going with. The X670 AORUS Elite AX. And then you're going to want to go to the manual. So, why did I choose this motherboard? Well, it has one PCI Gen 5 SSD up here between the CPU and the graphics card slot. Then, in addition to that, it has 3 more M.2 slots. So I can run 4 M.2 slots without stealing lanes from the graphics card or turning off PCIe slots or weird sharing of resources and stuff like that. So if we go down here, and you can see it's X670, so it has the dual chipset. And if we go down here, the other thing too that I want to point out to you guys, this motherboard is very good for live streaming because if you needed Thunderbolt 4 right here, it has Thunderbolt 4, aka USB 4. You can add in Thunderbolt via the PCIe X4 slot, the second PCIe slot down there. So if we go down here, you want to look at the block diagram to see what all this motherboard can do. So, like I said, PCI Gen 5 SSD capability for the primary. Then we have PCI Gen 4 for the graphics card and a second M.2 slot. So you can run two M.2 drives directly to the CPU, bypassing the chipsets completely. So these will be extremely fast. And this is the reason why I think one of my longtime viewers, RK, was saying that when he tested the fastest SSDs in the world, the AMD one was faster than using an Intel motherboard. And that's because most of the time, the Intel motherboard, you have to run your M.2 like this one down here. It has to go through the chipset and then into the CPU. Now, Intel does have the ability to run on Z790. You can run a Gen 4 SSD directly to the CPU, but only one. Only one. If they allow you to run a second one, it'll be taking lanes from the graphics card. So you don't really want to do that. So that's something to be aware of if you're on an Intel platform. But you don't have that problem with the AM5 socket, and that's because the chipset is kind of modular. So in addition to those two, we can add a third M.2 drive down here off this first chipset. And then if we need a fourth one, we can run a fourth one off of the second chipset. And we also have 4 SATA ports. SATA ports, there's only 4 of them, but realistically, this is supposed to be a gaming-focused PC, so you're not going to run a lot of hard drives, but you could easily run a lot of 2.5-inch SATA SSDs if you wanted. All right. And the other thing, so right down here, PCI Gen 4, you have X4. So this is where you would plug in your capture card so you can play GTA 6 using your PC through the PlayStation 5 or the Xbox Series X. This is how all the big live streamers are able to live stream PlayStation 5 or Xbox games, because they are using this slot down here to connect their console to the PC via an AVerMedia or an Elgato capture card. I myself do this. This is how I was able to live stream Final Fantasy 16. All right, and then finally, on the right-hand side here, we have a PCI Express 3.0 for Wi-Fi, 2.5 gigabit networking, and the final PCIe slot, which is only 2 lanes. Now, people might look at this and they're probably wondering, well, what do you do with an X2 PCIe slot? So this bottom slot down here, it's physically X16, but it is electrically X2. So it only supplies 2 lanes for PCIe signaling. So what is this good for? It is actually perfect if you want to add 10 gigabit LAN. You can buy a 10 gigabit networking card from Newegg or Micro Center or Amazon or whatever. I have a video showing how to do this, by the way. But those will typically come with 4 lanes, but as long as it supports, as long as the add-in card supports 3.0 speed, you can get 10 gigabit speeds with only 2 lanes. I verify this. I actually have a video showing a throughput test. And the other thing I will let you guys know is, if you were to buy a more expensive motherboard that includes 10 gigabit LAN, they have actually soldered the 10 gigabit LAN to 2 lanes of Gen 3 bandwidth. So they're literally doing exactly what I'm describing. They're just integrating it directly onto the motherboard as opposed to using an add-in card. So it's nice that Gigabyte gives you the flexibility, because if I don't need 10 gigabit, then I can plug in a second capture card for a camera, for example, or if I wanted to do 1080p 60 capture with HDR as opposed to 4K 60, which you would need 4 lanes for that. So that's kind of different choices. So I like this motherboard because it gives me the flexibility with these 2 PCIe slots down here. The other thing that's really nice about this board is look at how far apart the first slot and the second slot are. These two slots are so far apart that I can easily install a massive RTX 4090 Strix or any quad slot graphics card will easily fit here and not hinder or not cover up my second PCIe slot. So I think Gigabyte did a really good job choosing the placement of where they put these PCIe lanes, because it's like they had the foresight to see into the future and say, hey, GPUs are becoming really, really big, so we got to have enough space between these two so we can still, so the end user can still make use of all the PCIe slots. So I thought that was a very wise decision. But that's the reason why. That's my reasoning for why I recommend this type of motherboard. Now, alternatives to this would be the ASRock Steel Legend X670E, the ASUS Strix E. Well, no, the ASUS Strix is too expensive. It would probably be something like the ASUS X670E Prime or something along those lines. And then maybe from MSI, they have the, I think it's the X670 Pro or something. So something along those lines would be similar to this motherboard. All right. Okay, so with that said, we can get into the building part of this. So we've got the, oh yeah, those PCIe slot placement is great. Yeah, I know. That's actually why I really think Gigabyte did a really good job in terms of the layout for their motherboards this generation. So that's the motherboard. For the memory, we're going to be building using 64 gigabytes. Now you can do 32 gigabytes if you want, but I'm trying to build this in a future-proof sort of, I hate to use future-proof because hardware changes so fast, but in terms of capacity for RAM, I do recommend 64 gigabytes if you can get 64 gigabytes. This is Corsair Vengeance DDR5, but you don't have to use Corsair. Just try to get, you know, either really fast 32 gigabytes or decent 64 gigabytes. So we're going to go with 64 gigabytes. And then for the cooler, you guys can see the boxes over here. It's kind of blocked by the... but we're going to be building using an air cooler. This is the Noctua NHD14. I actually already have it out here. So this is the cooler that we're going to be using. So it is a dual fin stack air cooler. It is the D14. So those who are not familiar with the D14, D14 is the predecessor to the D15 from Noctua. So this is the older one, but they work almost exactly the same in terms of performance. So we're just going to use this because I already had this available. So that is the cooler. And then for the graphics card, we're just going to go with this. It could be any graphics card, depending on budget. And then we have the D14 and the power supply. And for the case, I'm going to have to move this somewhere. I didn't think this through. And actually, I don't even need to be wearing the headphones. So for the case, you guys can see it here. This is probably a case that nobody is familiar with. This is an NZXT Hades. This is the NZXT Hades case. It is from an era when they did the door on the front of the case. So just to kind of show that here, let me move this like this. Flip this around. So this case is from an era before tempered glass was popular. So you can see there's no tempered glass. The case is actually pretty easy to lift up because there's no glass. The panel on the side just kind of comes off. You just take the two screws off and then it comes off and it goes out. A relic vintage case. Relic vintage case. Yeah, I like that. I'm probably gonna call this that. You can see it has a 120 millimeter in the rear. It has the ability to install two 120. You can do two 120, or you can kind of see it on the upper right camera there. It's got holes for the 120 or 140. So you can do dual 140 or 120. So technically, this case could support up to a 280 millimeter rad, except the problem is there's not enough height. So if you wanted to do a 280 millimeter radiator on this, you would actually have to put the radiator outside the radiator would have to sit on top of the case, and the fans would be like underneath, pushing air up, or the fans would be up here and the radiator would be in there. But typically the fans wouldn't be out here, because then, you know, they're going to be spinning up here, and you can like stick your finger in there and then cut your finger off or whatever. So anyway, that's why we wouldn't do it that way. What about airflow? Okay, yeah, for the intake, I mentioned this is when the door opens. So you can see this, you can tell this case is old because look, see, it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's your NZXT logo. It's got 4 5.25 inch for optical drives, or what do you call those things? The camera, like SD, micro SD, the card reader could go in here. So it has a single down here. It's got a single 200, I think it's a 200 millimeter fan. If we turn it around, and I've already got the power supply in there, it's kind of hard to see, but you can kind of see in here, you can see the large 200 millimeter intake fan in the front. Originally, the side panel also had a 200 millimeter fan on the side, but I took it off because I didn't need it. There's not enough room because the graphics card would like bump up against it. But you can see it has a nice mesh panel on the side, and it has a mesh grill here as well. So this is what we're going to be using. So airflow is decent because you have a large 200 down here that doesn't generate much noise. Then you have a 120 in the back, and if you want to put fans on the top, you can. I don't have any right now, but this way the airflow is essentially from in and then out like that. Okay. So this is what we're going to be using. And you guys may have noticed I already have the power supply pre-installed. That way we don't waste a bunch of time, because I was reviewing my Threadripper live stream, and there was so much of that video was just me quietly like connecting power cables and stuff. So I did some of that off stream so that wouldn't be boring. So we're going to focus primarily on the main components. All right, maybe I should move this here. Well, then the main camera doesn't have a very good view because the tripod's in the way. But I guess this is probably okay. This way you guys can see everything right here. All right. So let's start with the motherboard first, and then we'll deal with these two. Let's just put this off to the side. Whoops. Am I wrong, but that PSU looks like it said XFX? Yes, you're not wrong. It is an XFX power supply. So this is the power supply. It's XFX. XFX, I don't know if they still make power supplies. It's been a long time. This is the only XFX power supply that I have. This power supply is 10 years old. This is a 10-year-old power supply. I think it's 10 years old. It is 80 plus silver. It has an NVIDIA SLI logo. It has a Radeon Crossfire logo on it. So you can tell this is from a long time ago when multi-GPU was still a thing. I like how it talks about like multi-rail versus single rail, all this stuff. That was back when that was the marketing stuff about power supplies. So yeah, we're using an 850 watt XFX power supply. And then the D14 is right here. Is the box for it. You can kind of move that off to the side. I'll put that over here. Didn't know they made power supplies. Yeah, I don't know if they still make them, but they used to. See, that's why EVGA could end up becoming nothing but XFX all over again. Because XFX used to make NVIDIA graphics cards and power supplies. Then they made AMD graphics cards and power supplies. And today they still make AMD graphics cards, but I don't know if they make power supplies anymore. Whereas EVGA made AMD motherboards and NVIDIA graphics cards. Then EVGA made Intel motherboards and no longer AMD motherboards. But then EVGA made power supplies and NVIDIA GPUs. Then they no longer make NVIDIA GPUs. So EVGA only has power supplies. So XFX only has graphics cards. EVGA only has power supplies. I think EVGA is probably going to die in a couple of years unless they can figure out, what to do, or unless they start selling like Intel GPUs or AMD GPUs or something. All right. So for the motherboard, let's get it out. All right, what I'll do is I'm just going to put it like this. This is sturdy enough to hold it. So there's the motherboard. So we're going to be dealing with this upside down. Okay. So normally the motherboard would have these brackets. They look like this. They look like this. So these are the stock brackets that come up here and here for a standard AMD, like a Wraith Prism or something, or maybe an AIO that uses these. But we're not going to be using these, so I've already removed them. So we're not going to use those. Instead, we're going to use Noctua's mounting kit, which I've already pre-mounted. You guys can see it like that. And then you can see the RAM slots here. What we'll do is we'll probably put the CPU in first, and then we will put the RAM in second, and then we'll mount the cooler. Or maybe I'll put it in the case, and then I'll mount the CPU cooler. Yeah, we'll do it that way. The reason why I like to do it in that order is because these 8-pin EPS connectors up here, if you guys look there, maybe it'll show up there. There we go. So you can see on that camera right there on the upper right, it's got dual 8-pin EPS 12 volt for the CPU socket. So those are going to be hard to get. Those are going to be hard to get at if you put the Noctua cooler on, because the Noctua cooler is going to be like this, and we don't want this to be in the way, because once this is in the case, it's going to be really hard to connect those. So we're going to put the CPU in, and then we're going to put the RAM in, and then we're going to put it in the case. Okay, so I will do it, I guess I'll do it this way. So we're going to have to unbox this Ryzen 7 7800X. You'd like to see benchmarks for that case? And different builds? Well, yeah, this case is probably going to be the one I use for the benchmarking. Alright. Alright, so here we go. Alright, so these open up, they're magnetic on the top. Once you cut the seal, they just open up like that. And then this flap comes up. And oh, okay, so they did actually change this, because the launch day one didn't open up like that. So that's interesting. So they're pretty much, these clamshell things are pretty sturdy. But you can see you get your case badge sticker right here, and then you get the CPU itself. Okay, so what we're going to want to do, we're going to want to open this. So if you're unfamiliar with LGA, land grid array, they have a bracket here. There's a cover protecting the pins. So on the CPU, the pins are actually not here anymore. They're actually on the motherboard. So the motherboard socket is very delicate. So they put this protective plastic covering here so that you don't accidentally drop something and bend one of the pins, because that would be really bad. So you open it up, we take it out. We're going to want to try not to touch the bottom of this. And then when you open up the socket, you press down on the lever to get it out from the little retaining clip there. Then that goes down and this comes up like that. Okay. So then this is going to go like that. And the CPU just kind of like slots in. You want to make sure that it's lined up. So just to kind of show what that looks like. See how it's just kind of sitting there? Then you're going to want to close that on top of it. It's going to lay down on top of it. And then just want to make sure it's all lined up. You do not need to remove this black cover, because as soon as you put this down and then you start applying pressure with this lever, it just pops it off automatically. See? So you don't really have to do anything with that. So it comes off very easily. And then there you go. So that's in. That's not going anywhere. We can turn it sideways. We can go upside down. The CPU is not going to fall out. So that's in. Okay, so now that that's in, let's see, can I put this in here? No, that's not going to fit. You're going to want to hold on to this. I like to just throw this in the motherboard box, so that if you ever need to upgrade the motherboard or whatever, you can sell the old one or whatever you want to do with that, and you put that back on. Okay, now we need to put the thermal paste on. And I need to remember where I put my thermal paste. Okay, for the thermal paste, we're going to be using some random cheap HY510. It's really, really cheap. I don't know if this is going to be just as good as toothpaste, or significantly better, or significantly worse. We're just going to put this random thermal paste, which is supposedly, I mean, it looks like thermal paste. They give you a whole lot. This is a lot of thermal paste. You can see this is pretty big compared to, let's see what else we got here. I've got a bunch of other, I had to dig out all my thermal paste. So you can see we've got some Noctua. We've got Zalman. So this is the Korean thermal paste. And then we've got a bunch of like Noctua, Cooler Master, and then we've got some Deep Cool right here. Thermal paste. And then we have some, I don't know what this is. There's some like off-brand, I don't know what this is. This was featured in a video I did. I don't know. This is some questionable, sketchy thermal paste. Unlabeled, unmarked. Just, you can see it in here. It's just like, okay, this is thermal paste apparently. I don't know where this came from. It's just kind of here. So we have that. It looks a lot like the Cooler Master one, but it doesn't have the label. Right? So there's There's sketchy, like 50-cent thermal paste. And then we've got Cooler Master thermal paste, which is almost out. There's barely any in there. Then Deep Cool and Noctua. Looks about the same. Deep Cool looks like they're a complete ripoff of Noctua. And then we've got Zalman, which I haven't used in years. This stuff is literally like 13 years old. So we're probably not going to use this. Just saying. But what I wanted to show you guys is this thermal paste. Like, okay, check this out. This is a Noctua thermal paste. This is this random HY. Look at the difference. Look at the size. Look at how much more thermal paste is in here versus this. You know, like, this is weird. I don't know what, like, I don't know. So HY510. We're gonna put some of this on here. Hopefully it works. Hopefully it doesn't fry the CPU. I've never used this before, so this is the first time ever using this strange thermal paste. Oh wait, hold on. I just realized something, guys. We don't put this on yet. We haven't installed the RAM and we haven't put it in the case. So we're not gonna actually do the thermal paste part yet. Oops. All right. Nobody has used that before? Yeah, this has never been used before. I have no idea. I have no idea if this works. So we're going in blind. All right, but we need to put the memory in next. All right, Corsair Vengeance memory. No RGB. This is just normal, cheap. Not cheap, but it's like the non-RGB. Okay. This is Micron 5200 megahertz. Cast latency 40, 40, 40, 77. So 1.2 or 1.2 volts or something. So, oh wow, there's like a fire truck going by. That's weird. Now someone's out to use it? Okay. So when you install the RAM, if you're installing 2 sticks like I am, you're going to want to use the 2nd and the 4th RAM slot or DIMM slots from the CPU. So if the CPU is here, you're going to use the 2nd one and the 4th one. Or if you're looking at it from the edge of the motherboard, the 1st and the 3rd one. So we'll kind of show what that looks like. So to install the DIMMs, let me make sure I line that up. Oh, I didn't put them in right. Okay. All right. So they just kind of click in. And then this one goes like that. They both go the same way. So this Gigabyte board has the clips on both the top and the bottom. It's going to depend on what motherboard you use. Some motherboards they don't have any, or they have them only on the top. All right, just going to show how that looks. RAM is installed. There we go. Some motherboards have an indicator printed next to the main RAM slots. I did not know that. Oh, I can actually use my little lamp here on my head to illuminate it. Okay, so that's in. And, oh yeah, it does have it. You're right, it does have it. I don't know if it's going to show up on the camera, but it does actually have the labels right there. It's kind of hard to show in the camera. I don't know if it's going to focus, but they do have A1, A2, B1, B2. So this is A2 and this is B2. Now for the vintage. Well, we're not going to put that on until we get this into the case. So now we got to get this into the case. Then we'll put the thermal paste on. get that quadra out of the way. I guess I could leave that here. So to get this in the case, I guess what I'll do first, I'll need to move this over here for a second. And then try to put it in upside down. For me, it's going to be upside down as I'm putting it in, so this is going to be interesting. So I've got these here with extenders in the back. Because this is an old vintage case, sometimes the standoffs can become loose. So you want to make sure that those are tightened before you put the motherboard on top of it. Then we already have our 24 pin hanging out over here. And we have these 8 pins up here for the CPU. So we're going to try to move those out of the way. Get all this stuff at the bottom out of the way. Get this out of the way. Cypher's asking, did you do any benchmarks on the new Avatar game yet? It's pretty impressive graphically. I've tested it. I have the game because the reason why I have the game is because I bought this. By buying a Ryzen 7000 series CPU or any Radeon 7000 series graphics card, you get Avatar Frontiers of Pandora for free. So I have the game. I have tested it on Threadripper with 2 different graphics cards. I've tested it with a 3090 Ti, and I have tested it with the XTX. So yeah, I'll be doing content on the Frontiers of Pandora in a little bit in the near future. But yeah. But I mean, for those wondering, that's how I got the game. I got the game because of the CPU. So, okay. So we're going to move that, and I guess I'm going to put this over here as well. Hopefully those stay up there. This is always kind of the finicky part of doing a build, is trying to get this in the case. This is why I like really large cases more than really small ones, because you can see, you know, like trying to fit this in here, this is going to be kind of a pain, but it will go in. You just got to work it. All right, here we go. So, trying to line that up. 24 pin is in the way. Okay. That's in the way. That's in the way. Okay. Alright, it's in. So the motherboard is in the case. Now we're going to have to screw in all the standoffs. I'm just checking all the standoffs here. I can see them. Okay. Is this a new thing where you do a PC build every week? No, it's not. Yeah, no, I don't. Unfortunately, I don't have unlimited funds. So, I mean, unless sponsors want to start sending me a bunch of PC parts, this is not a new thing where I'm going to be doing this like every week. So, yeah. So what we're doing with this live stream, we're doing a gaming-focused PC build, whereas last time we were doing a high-end desktop, productivity, content creation, that kind of PC. Because the reality is, gaming PCs are not actually high-end desktops. just letting everybody know. That means well, let me rephrase that a little bit. The closest thing to a high-end desktop, without being a high-end desktop, is an i9 or a Ryzen 9. The 9s are almost high-end desktops. But they're not true high-end desktops. They're wannabe high-end desktops because they don't have the connectivity options. They don't have the PCIe lanes. They don't have the big chipset. They're missing that stuff. And that's why they're not true high-end desktops. They're glorified mainstream desktops. That's actually what i9s and Ryzen 9s are. So if you're looking for value for a gaming PC, you need to look no further than a 7 class. Either a Ryzen 7 or a Intel i7. That's where it tops out. You go above that, you get huge diminishing returns in terms of what it actually offers you. So you have a mid-range desktop then? If you have an i5, yeah, you have a mid-range desktop. Well, okay, yeah, I mean, i9, Ryzen 9, they are technically kind of, I don't want to say mid-range because they're kind of the top of what they are for their market segment, but they're not real high-end desktops. You know what I mean? To use a car analogy, let's use a car analogy. A Threadripper is like a Ferrari, okay? Threadrippers are like Ferraris. Intel Xeons are like that class of automobile. Whereas a Ryzen 9, like a 7950X3D, this is more like a, this is like a, like what kind of car would this be kind of like? This would be sort of like a Toyota Avalon, you know, like an Avalon. This is a Toyota Camry, okay? Like, to use the Toyota analogy, this is a Toyota Avalon. This is a Toyota Camry. That's why, and notice there's a lot of people driving Toyota Camrys. So this is kind of like what most people would actually get. You know what I'm saying? If you go to an i5 or a Ryzen 5, that's like a Corolla. So we got Corolla i5, we have Camry 7, and we have Avalon 9. That's kind of what these things are. But if you want like an LFA, or like a Lexus LFA, or a Ferrari, or a Lamborghini, or a Porsche, or a Zonda, those things are Threadripper and Xeon. See, that's the difference. You can think of it that way. Here we go from a Ferrari to a Toyota. Yeah, exactly. Last week we were building a Ferrari. This week we're building a Camry. It's funny because it makes a lot of sense when you think about it. Think about how much more money a Threadripper costs versus a 7800X3D, right? The Threadripper is way more expensive. The motherboard's way more expensive. The RAM is way more expensive. But then this is like way more affordable, right? So that's why it's mainstream. That's why it's like your mid-range desktop. Did that even go in? That didn't even go in right. This one went in kind of like cross-threaded. There we go. Now it went in right. Let me check all of these. All right, they're all in. Okay, so we're in. Now, what I like to do is I just like to connect the 24 pin because it's easy. So 24 pins in. Now we'll do these two up here, the EPS 8 pins. Here's where having a tall case, or me not doing this upside down, would actually be a lot easier. This can be very challenging if it's kind of hard to reach. All right. All right, we got both EPS. Make sure that one's in all the way. Okay, so they're both in, 24 pins in. So we got the power for the CPU and the motherboard. Now we need to do this fan header right here. I don't even remember where this is supposed to go. Was there a fan header over there? Where's this gonna go? I guess it's gonna go this way. System fan. Do we got one up here? I don't have one for this guy. So I'm gonna have to either route this around some way, or it's going to have to just go down here and route it down there. That's going to look kind of bad, but we'll see. System fan 4. Unless there's a way for me to route this around. This cable doesn't look like it's that long, though. So I'm probably just going to have to shove it here and tie it down so it's not visible. Okay. So that's the fan. The exhaust fan is in. That's plugged in. We have all of our CPU stuff up here. So now I want to do these down here so I don't forget about them. Near what? GR86. Wait, what? What are those supposed to be? Those supposed to be some other X3D stuff? People were buying up the 3080 like crazy last generation, and it wasn't because it was a 80 class, but the performance to price that made a difference comparison. Yeah, but Matt, you got to remember that most people that bought 3080s when that card was at the top of its game overpaid. They overpaid by a lot. Unless they bought them in pre-builds. But even then, the pre-builds were overpriced. Like, they were way more overpriced than they are now. Alright, this is going to be kind of hard. So I'm going to have to turn this around just so I can see briefly the labels here. Oh, you know what? I just learned something. This motherboard has a clear CMOS switch right here. There's a physical button for the clear CMOS. I did not know that. Okay, so this AORUS Elite, it does not have a clear CMOS on the back, but it does have one on the motherboard. So that's actually nice. It's right next to the actual clear CMOS jumper cables, or jumper pins. Okay, so we want the hard drive. I think hard drive is this. Power plus is this. Power minus. And then, what's this? The power switch. All right, where's my reset? I got reset right here. Reset, negative. Okay. Okay, so I've got all my main connectors here. Okay. I think that's all of them. And I want to also add this little speaker. A lot of people overlook this, and I'm very disappointed with newer cases. All this tempered glass and RGB, and they don't even give you a speaker in the case anymore. This is very good if you're trying to debug why your PC is not posting. So we're gonna get this, why it's not booting up. All right, so that's in. All right, we got the speaker for the beeps. Now, I need my, the fan. Yeah, the fan header. All right. So this case is so old that there's no USB 3 on the front. The front only has USB 2. So I only have the USB 2 header down there. Let's get these out of the way. Where's this screwdriver? Your pre-built you got before I got now still has the CPU. It came with the 6700 XT and a 5600X. What did the 6700 XT look like? Because if that's a pre-build, was that like a OEM from Dell or HP Omen or something? Or Lenovo? I'm always curious to know what the OEM like the graphics cards they put in a pre-build, I'm always curious to know what they actually look like. All right, now we gotta put the. Now we have to use this sketchy thermal paste, which they give you a lot, but I don't know if that's because it's good value or if it's a ripoff and this is gonna be toothpaste. So, but you can see this is an enormous amount of thermal paste. What do they give you in this thing? Okay, so now we got to put the thermal paste on. Oh, it was XFX? Okay. Was that pre-built from like Best Buy or something? Alright, so that's open. Man, that's a lot. That is a ton. Okay, for this, we only need a little rice grain. I am of the opinion that when you apply thermal paste, you only need a small little dot. You don't need an enormous amount. You don't need all this like globs and globs. No, because you're just going to make a big mess around the CPU. So we're going to put it right in the middle. That's all you need. So I'll zoom in so you guys can see it. Alright. Alright, so just to kind of show... I don't know if I can reach. Hold on. There you go. Wait. Go up. Okay. There. That's the thermal paste. It's just a little rice grain. It's like a fat little rice grain. That's all you need, because the CCD, and remember this is a single CCD chip. So there's one here, and there's either nothing over here or there's a dummy die over here that has nothing. And then the IO die is literally right kind of centered right where the rice grain is. All right. Okay, so that's on, and now we need to mount the Knox. Now, when you do this, you want to make sure that the please remove thing is off. So we're going to take that off. Okay, and the other thing I'm going to do for this cooler, we are going to have to take the middle fan out. This has to come off so we can screw this down. All right, I want to test fit first. Okay, that looks like that just goes right on. What I'm checking for is if this fan is touching the RAM. You want to make sure your RAM clearance is good. So I can tell there's a gap. So we're good. All right, then we're just going to tighten this on. These CPUs don't use that much power, and they don't actually generate much heat. These Ryzen 7s, these X3D parts, but they do have a pretty tall IHS. So they are still going to get warm, but it's not the kind of warm where it's running hot because it's due to a lot of electricity. It's running hot due to the IHS having a lot of, too much of a buffer almost to get the heat out. Alright, so now this thing, I'll route this cable. Where's my CPU fan? Alright, so this one, we'll put this one here. I guess I'm going to have to route that around. Okay, so that fan's on. Now we got to get the other one on. So Noctua uses a really interesting design for the center fan. So this is actually, I think this is a, what's the size on this? I think this is a 140, this is a 140 millimeter fan, but it's on some kind of custom mount. See, it's like the screw holes are like a 120 millimeter fan, but physically the diameter of the fan is a 140 millimeter fan. So it's interesting how they do that. Alright, what I'll do for this one, I guess I can either do it the same way, I can just put it like this, or what I could do alternatively, rather than have it go that way, I could make it go this way. Yeah, I think this is better. In fact, I might turn the other one around. And what I'm checking for here is you want to make sure that the fan is not going to bump up against the case. So it can actually go down pretty far. Okay. And then I can feel down here, it's not touching the cold plate. There's still a gap between where the bottom of the fan is and the cold plate on the CPU. Alright, now we just plug this one in. I gotta get at this at a really weird angle because the case is very, very short relative to where the motherboard goes. Alright, so that's in. Okay, so our CPU fans are both plugged in. We got CPU fan and an optional CPU fan. You can do it the other way around, doesn't matter, they're going to run at the same speed. If this is in line with the hard drive cage, then it should be clear. There's no hard drives. There's no hard drive cage. I already removed it. I mean, you could put optical drives in here, but I'm not running any right now. But yeah, I personally like these older designs because I'm not a fan of all the tempered glass because the glass makes the case a lot heavier, and you know, like if your cat or something like scratches on the glass because they're annoyed by the RGB or whatever, you know, that's annoying because then you're gonna get all these like scrapes and scuffs on it, or if you get scuffs on it just in general, right? So I'm not a big fan of the glass. Like, I don't know where that trend came from, but I've never liked it. I actually like the old school like mesh or the plastic windows. I think those actually were just easier to deal with, less prone to something breaking and that kind of thing. So anyway, and these are also good, but the only reason why I don't care for these that much anymore, these sleds and these hard drive cages, is because hard drives are becoming less and less relevant every hardware generation. Like every upgrade cycle, hard drives become more and more irrelevant, at least for the consumer client side desktop like this. For servers, they're still relevant, but you know, we're not building a server, so okay. So now I got a review. So I've got all my front panel. Oh, I need my audio, my front panel audio, even though I'm not even going to use it. Yeah, we need to get front panel audio over all the way over here. This case is so old, it has the AC97. You've got AC97 and then you have HD audio. If you have an old case, make sure you use HD audio. Do not plug AC. In fact, I don't know if you can. Well, strangely enough, the pinouts are the same. But try not to use the AC97. Use the HD audio for a modern motherboard. Alright, so that's in. So, upgrade options. Just to kind of show what we have here. So, obviously the graphics card is going to go up here. We have an X4 slot for a 4K 60K capture card for PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series X. And then down here we have an X2. So if I wanted to add 10 gigabit LAN, I could put an add-in card in the bottom slot and do 10 gigabit LAN off of this PC. So I like that it gives you the option to do it. So it doesn't charge you for the 10 gigabit, but if you want the 10 gigabit later, you have the ability to add it to this motherboard. Okay, I think the only thing missing is the GPU. Yeah, I don't have any, we're not going to plug in any SATA drives or anything. So yeah, we're just the GPU. They need to bring these up. You like the cases with the things on the front like this? These magnetic doors? You put a PCIe card for USB-C in your system. Motherboard came with USB 3 header. So you just need... Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah. This case is so old that I can't use any USB-C. In fact, this case is so old, there's no USB 3. Like, it doesn't have the blue USBs on. That's how old this case is. For those wondering when I got this case, I bought this case off of Newegg in 2009 or 2010. It was that long ago. That's how old this case is. You can see these old school cases, even though it's from 2009, it still has a dust filter for the power supply. Now I'm not going to use that because I've got my power supply fan up top. So my power supply is going to suck in air from in the case and exhaust it out the back. Alright, for the GPU, we're going with the power color, Unleash the Gaming Power, AMD Radeon RX 7900 XT, because right now, this one is like $749 or something. Like, you can get these with rebates for anywhere from $700 to $750. So I think this is the best deal if you're looking for a high-end GPU that's going to max out 1440p in pretty much everything. And it allows you to do 4K if you wanted, because it has 20 gigabytes of video memory. 20 gigabytes for like a $750 card. You cannot actually beat this in terms of the value for money on that VRAM. Just to kind of do the unboxing, I guess. It's so weird, like, opening up all this stuff upside down. Alright. Ground myself a little bit. Because sometimes these boxes, they have, like, static in them. Okay. So this is a reference RX 7900 XT. So this is kind of what the reference card looks like. So it's pretty standard. It's easy to upgrade because I don't have to do anything with my 10-year-old power supply. I literally just use the dual 8-pin and that's it. No RGB. Return this card. Yeah. Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, actually, no joke, I am kind of disappointed that there's no lights on this card at all. Like, not even the Radeon logo lights up. Oh, you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to take the screws out. I forgot to take the screws out on the side. It's a dual... Hold on, let me see. How wide is this thing? So this GPU is, you can see right here, it's actually a triple slot, or it's like a 2.5. Cause see how the bracket is here, but then you have like this almost like half an inch on the cooler. So this is actually like a 2.5 to 3 slot for a reference card. It's really weird installing this upside down. You guys see it right side up, but to me, I'm putting the GPU in upside down, which is just, it feels really weird. I'm so used to everything being the other way around. Okay. All right, let me see how that looks. All right, so if we lift this up, all right, now we just got to plug in the power cables. Which one of them should be over here? The other one's over here. Alright, simple dual 8-pin. This is a very basic power supply. You can see it's not one of those that has like another set of 8 pins hanging off of the side. No, it's just a single 8-pin, another 8-pin. And there's like, there's a third one in there somewhere. We don't need that. Okay. GPU's in. Just doing a double check on all the connectors here. There's nothing going in that fan grill. Okay. So it looks like we're good. What I'm gonna do now greetings. Hey, from Ukraine. How are you doing? All right. All right, we need to get the keyboard and the mouse connected and turn this on. How is it with the side panel? Could you put it on a, could you put a fan? No, the fan won't fit. You can't put a side fan on the side panel because the side panel, as you can see, it goes right up against it. There's no room. Put this here, I guess. You know what, I'm just going to run these off the back like this. Okay. We'll just run it like this. And then, oh, the monitor. I've got the monitor over here. I guess what I'll do is I'll just put this here. And I'll put the monitor here. If it'll reach. Might not easily reach. Alright, I press the power button off the front. Alright, let's see, here we go. Moment of truth. Fans are slowing down. Is this monitor on? Yeah. Oh, I need to check the what it's actually doing. I can't see the LEDs, so I don't know what's going on. Oh, there we go. There's the post beep, so that's good. Start mashing that delete key. All right, it says right here. I don't know if you guys can see this, but it says new CPU installed. FTPM PSP NV corrupted, or FTPM PSP blah 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 has changed. Structure has changed. Press yes to reset. Okay, here's this. This is the same thing we saw when we first built threadripper. Anytime you build AM5, you're gonna have to, if you're going to do like BitLocker, or if you have your platform secure processor thing, what do they call it? The trusted platform module. You're going to need to have the key for that ready if you're using this security functionality. But in my case, we're not doing that, so we're just going to go ahead and press yes. Actually, let me make sure. If you have BitLocker or encryption enabled, the system will not boot without a recovery key. Press N to keep previous FTPM record. Continue boot. System boot FTM will not enable in new CPU. You can. Okay, so we're going to do yes. So it looks like it's good. That came up pretty quick. You really old school tech. What? Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. Here we go. Come on, come on. Delete, delete, delete. Let's get into that BIOS. We'll get into that BIOS. Okay. I need to be able to see this. Move this, I guess, over here. Okay. The monitor was sitting on the mouse cable. But I don't really use the mouse cable that much anyway. So BIOS has been reset. Please reconfigure your BIOS setup items if needed. Okay. Alright, so you can see X670 AORUS Elite AX. And then the BIOS version is F11D from Gigabyte, and it says AMD Ryzen 7 7800X3D, 64 gigabytes of RAM. You can see we're on A2 and B2 right there. So you have 32 gigs there, 32 gigs there. We have no SATA. If we click on PCI, you guys can see we have a PCIe 4.0 X16 at 4.0 X16. This is the graphics card. And then for M.2, we have a Intel SSD 2 terabyte. This is the Intel 670p SSD. And that is the only thing that we have in here. So we just have an Intel M.2 and a Ryzen 7800X3D. And then we have a Radeon GPU. Looks like the CPU is running good. You can see the CPU temperature is currently at 28 degrees Celsius. So it looks like the thermal paste seems to be doing good. We're going to have to test it a little bit. Some Cooler Master cases from the same period had their side panel fans placed lower to avoid the CPU cooler. Oh. Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about, yeah. Yeah, this is such an old school case. I mean, you can't really do like USB 3 on the front or anything. But it seems like it works okay. Alright, what I want to do real quick, let me just go in here. And what I want to do, enable XMP/Expo. So you can see this RAM kit from Corsair has on Expo/XMP profile, so we're going to load that there. We could go into the advanced mode right here, and you can see the XMP profile. We're going to load that there, and that's all you really need to do, and that's basically it. So what we'll do here is, what I want to do actually, I want to make sure, well, we'll just go with that because I think that's fine. We won't get into any overclocking on this because I just realized that we're using, hold on. What is it? Ubuntu is in here. We're using Linux. This is the Linux SSD. Oops, I put the Linux SSD in here. So we're gonna load XMP or Expo and let it do the memory train. Or memory training, and then it should come up. You can do USB-C and 3.0 if you get a panel for the one of the. Oh yeah, you're right. Okay. Yeah, I mean I have USB-C. I've got USB-C on the back of the motherboard, and I've got a bunch of USB 3 on the back of the motherboard. So, but yeah, the front panel I don't have any. Alright. So it's going to do its double boot, because Gigabyte does double boot. Now it's going to come up. Alright, there we go. AORUS. AORUS. It's loading Linux. Ubuntu is coming in, because we got Linux on this SSD. I don't have Windows on here. So we're not really going to be able to do any, you can see there's the Ryzen login. So that's it, guys. That's pretty much the build. We're on Linux, so there's not, I can't really do like any games right now. I don't have the disk. I don't have my SSD installed that has all my Steam games. And plus I would have to, I think I'd have to do like the Proton setup. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That is a 7800X 3D build. I don't think I'm going to keep this with Linux. I might change them out. We'll see. Yeah, much easier than the Threadripper in terms of the build. Well, actually, no, that's not true to say that. The Threadripper one took longer for me because that case was really annoying to build in. Whereas these old school cases are so easy to build PCs in compared to the newer ones. Because the newer ones, you got the glass panels, you got to take the glass off. Everything's really heavy. You have to open up all that stuff. It's super annoying. Oh, RK finished the Threadripper build while I was building. Interesting. Okay. That was pretty quick, though. That was pretty fast. All right, if we want to put this side panel on here, let me make sure I can fit this on here. If we move this out of the way. Let's see if this is going to impede anything. No, it goes on. I can get the side panel on. It's not really hindering anything. So it's on. Are you going to update the BIOS? I don't need to. It's already, well, it's not on the latest one, but it's on F11D, which is, I think, the second to the newest one. Oh yeah, in general, you would want to update the BIOS. Now you can boot up Hogwarts Legacy and finish it. On Linux? Does it run on Linux? Because we're running Ubuntu right here. On this SSD. I'd have to put the Windows one in here, or I'd have to put the Steam drive in this case, or on the motherboard. Alright, so let me just move this monitor out of the way so you guys can see kind of the case, how it looks when it's finished. That's it. You can see the mesh panel on the side. See, you can kind of see the air cooler right there. That's how it looks from the top. If I wanted, I could add some fans. I could put two 140mm or 120mm fans as exhaust on the top. I don't know if that's actually needed though. Like, I have heard some people say that when you put a fan on the top, it actually makes the airflow worse. It's like it causes more air congestion rather than just letting the back fan pull the air out the back. So, I don't know, I might just leave it like this with no fans up top. When you build your new PC, when you bought Intel optimized RAM instead of AMD optimized RAM. No, it'll work. We're using Intel RAM. Check it out. Oh, it doesn't. Is it gonna focus? Intel XMP ready. Corsair Vengeance DDR5. That's what I'm using right now. I'm using Intel XMP RAM and it works fine. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about it. Here's the reason why you don't need to worry about it. Remember, keep in mind that the older AMD CPUs, like the Ryzen 5800X 3D, and all the older Ryzens, like all these Ryzen CPUs that are AM4, they only use XMP. There's no Expo with the older RAM. Likewise, if you have a newer 7000 series, this is going to work fine with XMP. The same way the older AM4 CPUs work totally fine with XMP. So I myself am using XMP pretty much on like all of my systems except for Threadripper. Threadripper is using a special RDIMM kit that is Expo only. There's no XMP profile in it. As long as the kit is on your QVL, it should work fine. Yeah, exactly. So I wouldn't worry about it. It'll work fine regardless, if it's Expo or XMP. That being said, I was running Expo memory with an Intel CPU for like 6 months, and I didn't have any issues either. So it works both ways. You can use Expo on Intel, you can use XMP on AMD. I mean, the one that I would question more is Expo on Intel, because AMD has been using XMP since AM4, and even further back than AM4. You know, like we're talking like Bulldozer and all those CPUs, they used XMP as well. So, I wouldn't worry about XMP, Expo, whatever. Just, it'll work. Okay, so everything looks good. Hold on, let me see if I can get in here on Linux. Yeah, so Linux does not have CPU-Z, but it does have a program called CPU-X. And it looks... I don't know, just move this, just to kind of show this briefly. Although it needs an update. It needs an update. Because, if you look here... Well, I guess I'll just show it like that. It's weird. This isn't a 7000 series CPU. It says AMD Ryzen 7, but then it says in parentheses Vermeer. Vermeer is actually 5000 series, Zen 3. So there's a bug, or not a bug, it's just the version of CPU-X on Linux that I have is old. It says AMD Ryzen 7800X 3D 8-core processor, but it's saying like Ryzen 7 Vermeer when it should be saying Raphael, because Raphael is the 7000 series. Vermeer is the 5000 series. So that is one thing I noticed with the CPU-X on Linux. Also, the motherboard... Yeah, so the motherboard BIOS that I have is from September 14th of this year. So it's not the latest BIOS, but it is new enough to support the X3D CPU. That is one thing I do want to point out. One thing you want to do if you're doing a new build and you're choosing an X3D CPU, you want to make sure that you're on the latest BIOS, because this CPU came out in April of this year. So chances are, if you buy a motherboard today, it'll probably ship from the factory with a BIOS that supports this CPU natively. But when I did my ASRock build earlier this year, and that one was with the 7950 X3D, and when I put that one together, the ASRock motherboard shipped with a BIOS from like October of last year. It was so old, the BIOS was so old, it did not recognize the CPU, even though the CPU was like end of February of this year. So, should have downloaded CPU-Y. CPU-Y? I didn't even know there was a CPU-Y. Oh, that's a joke. That's Marcelo. I was like, wait a minute, what? There's a CPU-Y? I was like, wait a minute, what? It was one of those comments. Yes, but you already have changed your RAM to 62. And that means you're not running the RAM stable. Are you running RAM that's actually rated to run at that speed? CPU-X, CPU-XYZ. No, what's the RAM rated to run at, though? Because if you're overclocking your RAM, then it's not guaranteed to run at that speed. It might not be binned high enough to run at that speed. Let's see. Is it going to tell me 96 megabyte L3 cache 16 ways? Is that supposed to be the V-cache? Is that supposed to be the V-cache on these things? Because I don't actually know. Like, does it tell you... The 70... On this box, the box for the 7800X3D says 104 megabyte cache. The 7950X3D says 144 megabyte cache. So, is that the total? That must be the total, because that one says 96 and this says 104. So I'm guessing it's like it's adding the cache for both. Yeah, I'm going to test this with Windows, because this is like the best gaming CPU. You'd want to test this with Windows rather than Linux. I'm not saying you can't use it with Linux, but to see its full potential in terms of the gaming stuff, ideally I'm going to have to pair this up with an RTX 4090 and basically do the exact same thing that Met did. Met has a 7800X3, so same CPU, and then like a 4090. So I'm going to have to do that. But the thing is, I'm going to test 4K, although I don't really know if it really matters. I can always do like DLSS or FSR3 or FSR2 or DLSS2 quality, because then that's kind of like 1440. You have 6400 megahertz RAM. Oh, then that's easy. All you go in there and you set uClock equals half mem clock in the BIOS, and then it'll work. Make sure you're on the latest BIOS though. You need to be running in Gear 2 mode. It's blue screening because you can't do uClock equals mem clock at 6400 megahertz. That's the reason why it's blue screening. If you want to run 6400, you have to set it to Gear 2 mode. It won't be 100% stable in Gear 1. That's why. You have to basically run it the same way Intel runs theirs if you're running high-speed RAM. So go in the BIOS and look for the setting for uClock equals memclock. Change that to uClock equals memclock divided by 2. Okay. See, so what I can show, like right here, I've got this RAM right here. This is Intel XMP, and it is 6400. One of these, I guess it's easier for us to use this camera, but this thing's in the way, so I guess we'll just move this a little bit. Okay, man, this is really weird. That tripod is just in the way. Anyway, this RAM kit is Intel XMP 96 gigabytes. This is 2x 48 gigabytes. I'm running this at 6400 with 7950X3D. 7950X3D can run this at 6400 Gear 2 mode. 100% stable in everything. 24/7. So that's one example. It is G-Skill. Where's the G-Skill logo? I don't know where the G-Skill logo is. Oh, there it is. G-Skill right there. This is the best RAM kit. This is literally the best RAM kit. You cannot get any RAM better than this, because this does 96 gigabytes, so 2x 48 at 6400 megahertz CL32 at 1.35 volts. SK Hynix M die. That is what we're using with the 7950X3D. And as you notice, there's another one. I have two of them. One is on the 7950X3D. The other one is with the 7950X. They both work 100% stable, 6400 megahertz. Just loading Expo. That's all you do. Load Expo and set Gear 2 mode, and that's it. All right, meanwhile, we've got Flare X. This stuff was free from Micro Center, And this was what I used to test with the, but this was running with Intel, four sticks of AMD Expo memory paired up with Marcelo's favorite part, a random product appears. This 900K 64 gigabyte AMD Expo at 6,000. Or no, yeah, 6,000. Or maybe it was 56. I can't. It was 64 gigabytes, so you should be able to do 6,000. And then the only other RAM I have is this stuff, which you can tell it's in use because it's empty. This is G-Skill Ripjaws S5, Intel XMP. I don't know why there's two different logos. Intel XMP. This, like 4 of them together, is 128 gigabytes. Because this is 64 plus 64. So if you take 4 sticks, that's not ideal because they're not designed to run all together because it's not a full kit of 4. It's 2 kits of 2 different ones. So I can run both of these 128 gigabytes at 4800 megahertz in Gear 1 mode on AMD or Gear 2 mode on Intel. And that's pretty much all the memory I have besides the Corsair Vengeance Micron that you guys saw me build the PC with. Alright, well that's pretty much it. What would you say that RAM is... Wait, what? Would you say that RAM is... I can barely see the... Oh, would you say the RAM is trash, the free RAM you got? It's not trash. The free RAM, what I will tell you is this is... The reason why I'm not using it right now is because this RAM is not overclockable. You can overclock it, but you're going to give yourself a migraine because this stuff is Samsung. This is Samsung memory. All the free memory, that's 32 gigabytes kits. So this is 32 gigabytes. This is 32 gigabytes. So if I'm running all 4 of them, if I'm running both together, that's 64 gigabytes. That's single rank DDR5. But it is Samsung memory. So the problem with Samsung is when you start overclocking Samsung, the memory gets really hot. You need a lot of voltage. You have to go to like 1.434, 1.45 volts, 1.46 volts. You start creeping up to like 1.5 volts. If you have to go to 1.5 volts, this memory is going to be running like at 60, 65 Celsius, and it's not going to be stable at 65 degrees Celsius. It's going to be, it's just overheating, and it's just not going to work. So you're going to get blue screens, you're going to get memory errors, you're going to corrupt your Windows operating system. That's why I said you're going to give yourself a migraine if you try to overclock the free RAM from Micro Center. So yeah, no, I mean, it's not trash. If you want to just load Expo and just be done with it, this RAM gets the job done. It's going to work. But if you want to overclock it, it's not going to work. So that's why I'm not using it right now. But I may end up using it in the future because I may need to do some testing on a machine, or I may need to overclock the RAM. So, but as you guys can see, I don't actually have, like, all my RAM that you guys see, like I just pointed out, like, all the good RAM is in use. Like, this stuff is being used. This stuff is being used. See? So I don't have any, like, all that RAM, all those empty boxes that you just saw of G-Skill, that's all SK Hynix RAM. All my Hynix RAM is in use. It's my Samsung freebie RAM that's not doing anything. So this is the stuff that's just gonna like sit around for now until I can figure out what I'm gonna actually do with it. So DDR4 go with Samsung, DDR5 go with SK Hynix. That's actually a pretty, I mean, that's an oversimplification. I would say, yeah, I would say in general, like for DDR5, Hynix is the best, like by a large margin. Like, okay, Samsung is like, here. Micron is like here. Or no, like, okay, Samsung is here. Micron is like here. Micron is actually pretty close to Samsung. Hynix is like so high up on, it's like above my head. You can't even like see where it hits on the graph. See? So yeah, for DDR5, Hynix is really like the only game in town if you're trying to get like high performance memory. DDR4, there's nothing really wrong with Hynix or even Micron on DDR4. Because, I mean, what are you going to be running on DDR4? DDR4 typically is going to be either 3200 or 3600. Rarely does anybody run like 4400, 4066, or 40, what is the other one? 4333. Like, no one really runs those kits. They're really hard to find. And they're getting even harder to find because DDR4 is slowly winding down. So, I would say in general for DDR4, I would get the highest density, cheapest one that you can get that is around like 3200 megahertz. I mean, that's pretty much what I would do for DDR4. DDR4, hold on. I'll show you my DDR4 just to give you guys some tips on DDR4. Okay, DDR4, we've got a big stack. Hold on, some of this. All right, we got DDR4 right here. We even have some DDR3. Actually, this is DDR3. Wait, no, is that DDR3? We got DDR3 right here. Hold on. Where's my DDR4? So we got some OCZ. Yes, that's right, OCZ. DDR3. High performance DDR3 from OCZ. This stuff is super old. This is DDR3 though. This is a 4 gigabyte kit. So 2 gig plus 2 gig. This is Windows Vista era stuff, guys. Yeah, this is Windows Vista and early Windows 7. This is probably RAM that I originally built with this Hades case that we literally did the build in. That's DDR3. So just to give you guys an idea of what this kit is, this is PC3 12800. Cast latency 999 at 1.65 volts. 1.65 volts. DDR3 was 1.5 to 1.65. 1.65 was your XMP voltage. 1.5 was your standard JEDEC voltage for DDR3. Alright, so that's DDR3. Then we have everybody's favorite RAM for Ryzen, at least. We have the legendary G-Skill Flare X. This is the original Samsung B-Die. This is Samsung B-Die, the most famous RAM in the DDR4 era. It's the fancy 3200, cast latency 14, 14, 14, 34, 1.35 volts. This is a 16 gigabyte kit, so that's 8 plus 8, 16 gigs. So we have a second one here. So if I were to run all 4 sticks together, this is a 32 gigabyte Samsung B-Die 3200 CL14 from Samsung, from G-Skill back in the day. This is what I ran with first gen Ryzen all the way until basically AM5. Then we've got some... This is the wrong RAM that's in here, but this is basically a bunch of rip jaws. And then we've got more rip jaws. So this is all empty because these are in my threadripper, my old threadripper, and some other, I don't even know where the other RAM is. It's lost. But anyway, that's my DDR4. But yeah, like if you guys want DDR4, Samsung B die. But at this point, I wouldn't really bother with Samsung B die. I would just say get whatever you can. If you're on DDR4, just get what's cheap and what does 3400. That's basically the best advice I can give you. These days, I actually hate dealing with DDR3 systems. Oh, you still deal with DDR3 systems? Oh, fun fact. This Quadro card, I recently pulled this out of a ThinkStation that was being decommissioned for e-waste, for recycling. I pulled this out of an Intel, it was like a ThinkStation with Xeon, and it had this thing at the bottom, and it was DDR3. Yeah, it was an old DDR3 system. So that's where that Quadro came from. It was gonna be e-waste, so I was like, well, I need a single slot GPU. Let's see if this will actually work. And then we've got some Corsair Vengeance DDR4 right here. You can see that's my DDR4 from Corsair. This is a 3000 megahertz. Yeah, this is XMP. Each one of these is 16 gigabytes. So we've got 2 X8. So we've got 64 gigabyte, or no, that's not right. 16. Yeah, that is right. This is 64 gigabytes across 8 sticks. So you can see that's actually not that great. This was originally for a threadripper system. That's why it's all stacked like that. And then if we go way back, this is some vintage stuff right here. This is vintage like the case. This is actually AMD memory. This is AMD DDR3 memory. So like I said in that live stream video when we talked about memory a few weeks ago, AMD actually used to have their own memory standard. You can see right here, AMD Performance, what does that say? Performance Series. AMD Performance Series memory. This is actually pretty good DDR3. This is probably the best DDR3 kit that I have. You know why? Because this is 16 gigabytes, so it's 2 sticks of 8, and it is 1866. 1866 with primary timings of 9, 10, 9, 27 at 1.5 volts. The most impressive thing about this kit is that it runs at 1866 with relatively tight timings at only 1.5 volts. So this is what I ran with my FX 8350 for pretty much like 5 years or something. So this RAM had this had XMP, but it also had something called AMP. AMP was AMD memory profile, and now they don't have it because they have Expo. So you guys can think of Expo. Expo is the spiritual successor to AMP. Okay, so that's probably the most famous, that's probably the most interesting DDR3 kit that I have. An actual AMP-based DDR3. So we've got some like OCZ right here, and we've got this, and then there was some other DDR3 somewhere, but I don't know where it is. It's like I got some Crucial Ballistic DDR3 from like way back. Run a 4770K with 4090 or XTX. Look at that legendary performance. 4770K. I mean, I could run the 4770K with this AMD memory. This is the best DDR3 that I've got. Because remember, 4770K is going to use DDR3. So I'm going to have to use this stuff with it. I still have the CPU, the 4770K. I still have the I have the FX 8350 as well. But I don't think we're going to be bringing that out anytime soon. Yeah, no, that thing's going to stay in retirement. You dealt with a DDR2 system till 2019. It was 800 megahertz. Yeah, I think you're right. I think DDR2 was like 800 megahertz because DDR3 was 1066, 1333, 1600, 1866, 2133. That's typically the top. And at the very end of DDR3's lifespan, there was 2400 and maybe 2666, but I think that was like the very like ultra upper end of DDR3. Are RAM heat spreaders necessary? They are if you're going to be overclocking, or if you're going to be running like an XMP or Expo profile. If you're not, well, in general, if you're running them at JDEC, no, they're not necessary. But if you're going to be running the voltage above JDEC voltages, then they are going to be necessary. And if you're running an overvolt, like for example with DDR5, if you're running the RAM at say 1.4 volts, you're going to need a heat spreader. Or 1.45 volts or 1.43 volts, anywhere like that, you're going to be needing a heat spreader at minimum. You might even need active cooling, especially if you're going to be running on Samsung. If you're on Samsung DDR5, this stuff's going to run really hot once you start going above 1.35 volts. What's the rarest piece of tech that I own? That's a really good question. I don't actually know. I don't know. Like, I would say this is pretty rare. This AMD DDR3 kit is pretty rare, I would say. I don't know, because this was I don't know, this had a very short lifespan in terms of when they actually produced these. Apparently the XFX power supply was kind of rare. No one knew that XFX had power supplies. Or at least the people watching didn't know. Maybe the Crucial T7. It's either going to be like one of the really new SSDs, like the Crucial T700, because not a lot of people have that. Or it's going to be something really old, like a rare DDR3 kit or some... I mean, I don't really have any like extremely rare CPUs or anything. So I don't know. Does a Crossfire bridge count as rare? Not really, no. No, because they shipped with the motherboards and they also came in the box with the AMD graphics card, or even the ATI graphics cards always had them. So, I would say SLI bridges might be even a little bit more rare than Crossfire bridges, but I could be wrong because the motherboards typically had SLI bridges. So, you know what? Actually, I think what's kind of rare would be the NVIDIA high bandwidth bridge for SLI. I think there's not a lot of people that have the high bandwidth one, or maybe the NVLink. I think those are kind of rare. I don't have any NVLink, but I do have the high bandwidth bridge for SLI. And I've got a bunch of old Crossfire bridges too somewhere, like in a box somewhere. But yeah, I don't know. Like I think this is pretty rare. Like, I don't think you're going to find a lot of people that have this sitting around. Like, AMD branded DDR3, 16 gigabyte, 1866, with an actual amp profile. There's not a lot of memory kits that have an amp profile built in. They're usually going to be XMP or JDEC. If we're talking DDR3, DDR4, it's literally either JDEC or XMP. There's no AMP on DDR4. So, yeah, something like that would be pretty rare. Does a Crossfire bridge... Oh. Do you burn in your new system? Yes. Always. Yeah, like, for instance, the Threadripper system. We're streaming on the Threadripper right now, and I stress tested it, like, for the whole week, pretty much, with a bunch of stuff, and it works fine. So yeah. Are you building a PC new? Are you building a PC now? Oh no, we already did it. We did it. We just finished it. It's done. It's right here. We're in Linux right now. You can see it on the screen. We just put this together. I guess you missed most of the stream. But we're kind of coming up on the end. Like, how long have I been live? We've been live for 2 hours and 15 minutes. So it only took about a little over an hour to put the whole thing together. Now, granted, the power supply was already pre-installed. I put that in there off stream just to save a little bit of just sitting there connecting cables. Are you benchmarking with the PC next stream? I could. So what I'm probably going to do next stream, we're going to be taking a look at Avatar, Frontiers of Pandora, because I do have that game now, because I got the code. I got the code from purchasing the X3D CPU. So I have the game, the official game, right? So I'm going to get all the updates and whatever. So we'll be looking at that. I've already tested it on 2 GPUs. I've tested it on an XTX. I've tested it on a 3090 Ti. And frame generation works. Everything works. The game looks really good. I was actually very surprised at how good that game looks. From a technical standpoint, I think that game is probably the next Crysis in terms of visual fidelity. The actual gameplay does also feel kind of like Crysis. Like old school Crysis, more so than Far Cry, but it is kind of more like Far Cry in terms of the way it's designed. But yeah, we're going to be looking at Avatar, Frontiers of Pandora in a stream in the future, in a very, very near future. And then we may revisit Hogwarts Legacy, because I do need to finish that game. And maybe some other Forspoken or some other stuff. I don't know. This year was full of Crysis games in a way. Man, this year was full of, like, a lot of games. Like, a lot of games. If it's the next Crysis, it should make your system cry. Yeah. Like, let's put it this way. I tested the game. I've already tested the game with the built-in benchmark tool. With and without FSR 3 frame gen. And, yeah, you need frame generation for that game. If you're playing it at 4K. If you're not playing it at 4K, then it's okay. But if you're doing it at 4K, frame generation is kind of a requirement. I mean, it's not a requirement, but if you want to run it at Ultra, it is a requirement. Otherwise, you're going to be running it at, like, FSR 2 or FSR 3 quality or something. I don't know. I'll do some content about the Avatar game, because that game surprised me. That game came out of nowhere. It's like at the very end of the year, and it just shows up. Like, the Game Awards are already over. They've already determined, like, who wins, and then, like, Avatar shows up, and the game actually looks really good. Like, I don't know. I would say this. If there was a category for best technical accomplishment, you know what I mean? Like, in terms of a game that is using, like, bleeding edge technology in terms of visual graphics and visual fidelity, I think Avatar actually wins. Like, I don't know. I can't think of any other game that came out this year that uses, like, that generates the visuals in the same way with such fidelity. And then also, it's like it runs really good, too, for the most part. It scales really well. So, I don't know. That one seems pretty good. Any recommendation for SSD? At least 2 terabyte. In terms of capacity, at least 2 terabyte for M.2s, because I think that's the sweet spot right now. I mean, you could get 4 terabyte, but those are usually less. You're paying more per gigabyte if you're doing 4 terabyte. But yeah, definitely 2 terabyte. Don't get a 1 terabyte. And I would say any Gen 4 SSD that you can get that's pretty good. Like, there's a lot of good ones. There's the FireCuda, there's the Samsung 880, the Samsung 990, the Inland. If you live near a micro center, the Inland Performance Plus, those are very good value. I recently did the threadripper build with an Inland Performance Plus as the primary drive and a Crucial P3 Plus as a gaming drive. But if you're going like the fastest one, like if you're asking me for the fastest drive, I mean, I've got it right here. If I can reach it. That. This is the fastest SSD in the world. So if you want the fastest SSD, this is the fastest SSD. The Crucial T700. Now, if you want like value for money, P3 Plus 4 terabyte. You're not going to be able to get, I mean, there was a really good Black Friday deal for this. There was another one from like B&H, but I forgot the brand name. But that one, I'll tell you right now, I paid like $170. $170 for a 4 terabyte Gen 4 SSD. This is under $200 for 4 terabytes. So I think that's pretty good in terms of value. This is going to be expensive, but if you want the fastest SSD, the T700 is currently the world's fastest SSD. Now, if you want to actually benefit from this drive, you need PCI Gen 5. If you do not have PCI Gen 5, then you are going to bottleneck this SSD with a Gen 4 motherboard, or a Gen 4 M.2 slot. So this, in order to take advantage of the speed that this offers, you need a Gen 5 SSD slot. And the motherboard that we built this PC with has a Gen 5 slot. So you need something like this. X670, that has a Gen 5 slot. B650 should have a Gen 5 slot. 4 terabyte are like $200 on average. Yeah, yeah, in general. So, but what I'm saying is like 4 terabyte right now is not going to be the best deal because it's past the Black Friday shopping season. I got this from a Black Friday deal from Best Buy for like $170 for a 4 terabyte Gen 4. But, you know, if you want fast, I mean, you didn't tell me. You just said SSD recommendation. So I'm going to tell you, like, what's the fastest in case you didn't know. And then, like, what's good value. So basically, 4 terabytes for under $200 is good value. Or 2 terabytes for under $100 is good value. I believe RT is on the preset. XTX, neither, what? What's the slowest? What are we saying? What are we talking about? Oh, the drive? Are we still talking about SSD drives? I mean, oh, I'm on this PC. Where's the other PC? I mean, it's kind of hard to do all this with all this stuff in the way, but if we go back to the monitor, hold on. Oh man, I can't do it from here. I'm like too far away from the stream PC. So I can't. I was gonna pull up the thing, but it's like too far away. I'd have to like get all this out of the way. I mean, we could do that. Actually, hold on. Hold on. Where's that window? Oh, there it is. Here, let me kind of move this stuff out of the way. So what I'm going to do, power this off, this PC that I just built, we're going to turn that off so I can get that out of the way. So we'll go back into the browser here and I'm going to have to move all this out of the way. How am I going to do this? There's a ton of things all over the floor. Hold on, let me try to get this. Wait. I can turn the microphone volume down because I don't need, if I move closer to the PC. Okay. All right, so I kind of fixed the layout here. Let me move myself out of the way more there. Okay, so just to kind of show, you said SSD, 2 terabyte SSD. In general, anything that is under $100 for 2 terabyte, that's going to be good value. So this is pretty good. Now I don't know anything about King spec, so you're gonna need to do your research because I don't know if this is good. You're asking me for recommendations in general. Like this 980 Pro, this is, to me, this is too expensive. But it depends on what you trust. This is good, but I think it's, if you're asking for a good deal, this is too expensive. Like if this was like 105 or $100, then yeah, then this would be a good deal. Likewise, this one is just too expensive. So, I mean, they're fast, but they're not like good value because realistically, Gen 4, I mean, I would get like whatever the cheapest one I can find that has relatively okay speed. Like this one's not going to max it out, but it's really cheap. So, you know what I mean? You have Crucial and Samsung. SATA SSDs from 2014. So what SSD brands have the best reliability and compatibility? The reliability, that all that really matters, the only metric that you can base that off of is the total bytes written. But the thing is, total bytes written is so not a non-issue. So I don't really, it doesn't really matter. I mean, I'm using such a mishmash of like really high-end ones and really like cheap ones. Like I said earlier, like this one. This is a really high-end one with lots of endurance, and it's also extremely fast. This one is a cheap one. This one doesn't have as, well, it's not as fast, but it has a 5-year warranty. So, yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't worry too much about the reliability. Most of them are pretty much really good. TLC is going to be more reliable. But yeah, like if you don't want to figure out which ones are TLC or which ones are QLC, you're going to want to pay attention to things like total bytes written. That's pretty much the only metric. See, look, this is not good value. This is not good value. But this is, wait, why is one of them, is this 1 terabyte? Wait, this is 2 terabyte? What is this? Is this 4 terabyte? Why is there one that's, Why is the one that has no heatsink so expensive and the one that doesn't have a heatsink so, or the one that does have a heatsink is cheap? Or not cheap? Oh, it's on back order. Yeah. See, this is the fastest SSD, but like I said, it's not good value. Right, so 2 terabyte, or, yeah, in general, 2 terabyte SSD under, or, well, you know, let's look at 4 terabyte. We already looked at that. Man, they really want to sell these King spec. I've never heard of King spec. I don't know anything about them. Team Group is actually pretty good. This is a Gen 3 though. So that's Gen 3. So it really just kind of depends. The Corsair. This is QLC, 4 terabyte. But look at that. This one is less than $200. This is less than $200, which means this one is actually going to be really good value right now. What's the speed on that? Oh, wow. This one is actually arguably better than the one that I got. But I wanted cheap. I wanted 4 terabytes for as close to $150 as possible. And that's what I managed to do. This is closer to $200. But this is 4 terabyte. But this is faster than the one that I got. Now, it's not that much faster. This is 5,000. Whereas this one is 6,000 on the reads. And the randoms are basically almost the same. And the... yeah, I don't know. This one would be good, though. But this is kind of more expensive. But it's 4 terabytes. QLC, 4 terabytes. What I tell people is you're not going to think about QLC, TLC. Like, once you buy the thing, and you're just going to care about how much storage capacity it has. Like, that's like the number one thing. Let's be honest. The number one metric is the storage capacity. Because, let me tell you, the difference between the world's fastest SSD and some cheapo, less than $200 4 terabyte SSD Gen 4 versus Gen 5, real world difference, I can't tell the difference. So that's why I wouldn't worry too much about the speed. I would worry more about the capacity. The dollar per gigabyte is actually what matters the most. I mean, you don't want something that has like no DRAM and it's gonna, like, once it fills up, it's gonna slow down. Like, yeah, that's sort of stuff that you're gonna want to pay attention to. Why the SATA Seagate Iron Wolf costs so much? Because it's sold by a third party. It's not sold by Newegg. It's sold by Memory and More. Next storage, Japan, for, like, what is this? Like, why is this so expensive? This is dumb. This is dumb. Like, this is 4 terabyte. This isn't even as fast as the T700. The T700 is faster, like, way faster than that. It doesn't cost that much money. That's dumb. This Western Digital, this is fast. This is basically maxed out Gen 4. But it's TLC. Maxed out Gen 4 for 140. I mean, that's an okay deal. That's an okay deal, but I'd like to pay like less than $100 for a 2 terabyte. So that's why I'd pass. Like, all the people bragging about 990 Pro, they just wasted their money because it's like no one really cares, and no, you're not gonna be able to tell the difference. Like, I kid you not. Like, somebody in a blind test with the T700 versus the 990 Pro versus this thing, some cheapo P3 Plus, they're not gonna be able to tell. It's going to be so operating system random dependent that you'll get so much variance that it's... Yeah, no. Unless you're literally sitting there running benchmarks, which no one actually does that with their PC on a daily basis, you're never going to know. So that's why this, in my opinion, isn't even worth it. At 2 terabyte, you would go for the SN770 instead, not maxing Gen 4, but it is plenty fast. That's what I'm saying. Like, that's what I'm saying. The ones that don't max Gen 4 are offering so much better value. And sometimes these, I wish these were cheaper, because I can see myself buying a bunch of these, like these 4 terabyte SATA SSDs, only because with Threadripper I could plug in like 8 of these. I could run 8 of these in a Threadripper PC. And there's going to be no bottleneck. I mean, obviously it's bottleneck because it's on SATA, but I'm saying like all of it can flow to the CPU and there won't be any issues with IOPS. I just wish these 2.5-inch were cheaper because they always have these things overpriced for some reason. It's kind of disappointing that U.2 never took off, because I feel like U.2, buying a M.2 NVMe or an NVMe drive that has a cable instead of going straight on the motherboard, I think it's easier to scale up the number of these versus having to have places on the motherboard to fit them, because it's going to be more challenging to install more M.2 drives if storage demands go up. Otherwise, motherboard manufacturers are going to have to figure out how to do stuff like start mounting them on the back of the motherboard to fit more of them in, but then you're going to need a case that can support that, and that requires new standards. So that'll change a lot of things. So it's not that simple. Those 4 terabyte get cheaper when you aren't looking at Samsung Crucial. Oh, really? Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah. Yeah. Look at that. $140 for a 4. Now, this is what I'm talking about. This is the sort of thing that interests me. I don't care if it's QLC. I don't care, because it's like you just want it to be SSD. The thing is, it seems like what I've realized throughout the course of this year is all the games that have come out this year, I have installed all of them on flash-based storage. I have not installed a single new game that came out this year on an old hard drive. Like, I don't know, does anybody actually even do that? Does anybody still install games on hard drives? Or is that like not a thing anymore? I found myself having to move old games off of my SSD onto hard drives because I needed the flash storage space on the SSD to fit the new game. So I would move like old games like Final Fantasy 13, Final Fantasy 12, all the old games that I know can run just fine on an old hard drive. I had to move those off the SSD because Hogwarts Legacy, Avatar, Jedi Survivor, Last of Us Part 1, all these new games, Armored Core, Starfield, you don't want these new games on a hard drive. It's just not going to work. So, I mean, yeah. 4 terabyte regularly goes on sale for $160. I mean, here's one right now for, Oh, you're saying Crucial MX 500. Yeah, I mean, this thing is... No one knows who KingSpec is. I don't know who they are. I've never heard of them. But yeah, 4 terabyte for $140. $10 promotional gift card with purchase. Limited time offer. This is actually very tempting. Like this kind of thing right here. What do you think about those M.2 PCIe slot adapters? I mean, those are nice, but like, who actually uses those on a consumer desktop? And when I say consumer desktop, I'm talking about like the PC that we just built, like this. Like, who is gonna waste an M.2 slot or a PCIe slot for an M.2 drive on a gaming desktop? Now, those make sense if you step up to Threadripper. Like, if you're doing Threadripper like this thing has enough slots to fit all the extra... It has enough lanes to fit all the add-in cards. So yeah, if you're doing high-end desktop, yes. But if you're doing like mainstream, like Ryzen or Intel. I mean, let's be honest. No one's gonna use a PCI slot adapter on those motherboards. You're gonna take up all your lanes, or your GPU is too tall because it's too thick. You can't fit the M.2 drive underneath it. All that kind of stuff's gonna happen. So, I mean, those are good, but they're only good if you're on HEDT. If you're not on HEDT, then they're kind of pointless. Yeah, but you know what? Crucial MX. Oh, but see, that's Platinum Micro. That isn't even Newegg. Yeah, so. Here, let's look at the new Crisis. Why does it do this? Why is it like system requirements for Avatar Frontiers of Pandora. Windows 10 or Windows 11. The minimum. Ryzen 5 3600 or Intel Coffee Lake. RAM 16 gigabyte. Video card 5700 or the Intel Arc A750. Both of those are 8 gigabyte cards with resizable bar on for Intel specifically. I like how they call that out. I like how they call that out. Notice this. They said, so this is coming directly from the publisher, Ubisoft. If you want to play Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, at the minimum specification, bare minimum, you have to have resizable bar. If you do not have resize, and this is only if you have an Intel GPU. If you do not have resizable bar, you cannot play Avatar Frontiers of Pandora with an Intel graphics card. Okay, NVIDIA GeForce 1070. That's really weird. Whoa, that's like... Is that for real? That's like... This is weaker than both of these. Anyway, 90 gigabyte available storage, SSD. DirectX 12. Recommended requirement. Okay, recommended requirements. Which means 1080p, 60 frames per second, high graphics preset with AMD FSR2 set to quality. Why are they saying FSR2? Don't they mean FSR3? Set to quality. Ryzen 5 5600X or Intel Core i5 11600K or better. Man, okay. Those are relatively modern. Those are not like brand new modern CPUs, but those are relatively... These are not old CPUs, right? They're both like this one. This CPU is just over 3 years old. This CPU is 2.5 years old. RAM 16 gigabytes. Video card RX 6700 XT 12 gigabytes or RTX 3060 Ti 8 gigabytes or better. 90 gigabytes of storage SSD. That's what I wanted to call out. SSD. 5700 is more 1080 class. Yeah, it's like a little bit faster than 1080, but yeah, it's like the 1080. Because the 5700 is a little bit faster than Vega 64, and Vega 64 is basically the GTX 1080. So basically, even the minimum for this game requires an SSD. That's the reason why I'm saying, like my argument earlier is that no one is installing games on traditional hard drives anymore. They're all going on SSDs. So that's the reason why everyone's asking for recommendations on SSD. So I totally understand where the question's coming from, because SSDs, the price on SSDs might actually go up starting next year, if all the rumors are to be believed. But I don't know by how much they're going to go up. The problem is everything is becoming more expensive. So it's like when they say, oh, Samsung's going to raise the price of SSDs, to me, that's like, oh, I roll. Okay, yeah, I just roll my eyes. It's like, okay, everything's more expensive, so might as well pile it on with the SSDs next. So it's interesting that this is what they consider required for 1080p. So the game with FSR quality. So the game is pretty hard to run. But I think most people... let's see, where is... What is this? Okay, this is what I wanted to look at. Okay. So, this is why I'm saying that Avatar Frontiers of Pandora is the next Crisis. Because when you look at this, it basically needs upscaling. No matter what. What's weird is this game has FSR 3. So the fact that it keeps saying FSR 2, my guess is the reason why they say FSR 2 is because if you have a PC, if you have a GPU that is old, it cannot do FSR 3 because it's too old. Like for instance, if you're on like Vega 64 or something like that, or a GTX 1080, then you don't get FSR 3 as far as I know. So you have to use FSR 2. So that's probably why they say FSR 2. But they do say that the game supports FSR 2 and 3, frame generation, and then Intel XESS and NVIDIA DLSS. So all of the upscaling methods are in there. But then the CPU is kind of bizarre because they say that the minimum is an ancient Intel i7 8700K or a Ryzen 5 3600. Those two are about the same. Yeah, that's accurate. And then recommended, these two are about the same. Enthusiast, nothing changes. And then Ultra, all of a sudden they're like 5800X3D and 12700K. So yeah, both of these are about the same too. So I don't know. I don't know how CPU heavy this game is. And because when I was running it with my Threadripper, I think it's like 1 to 2 FPS slower on Threadripper than it is on like the normal consumer desktop. So to me, it's not like it's super CPU heavy. I mean, it uses CPU, especially if you're doing frame generation. Okay, and then yeah, look at that. Like the Ultra, you basically need the most expensive GPUs. You just want a GPU you can finally get for like $350 that isn't RDNA 2. Is there? Oh, there is not one, is there? Yeah, you're right. There isn't one. That's interesting. There is a gap. Yeah, there's a gap. Because what is the... This one's going to be like, what, 400? Yeah. So yeah, you're right. There is a gap. Huh. There's actually a pretty large gap. Because there's this for 450. And then the only other one that's RDNA 3 is this. Which is like way lower. And the thing is, on that website... So you're basically talking about a 1080p computer. Or 1080p gaming. So it's almost like, every time I see these sort of charts... It's like they're classifying resolutions into different price categories. That's actually what this is, if you look at it. Because if you want to be able to play this game at 1080p, they're saying you're going to need 6700 XT or 3060 Ti. So that means you're going to have to spend about $300 something for a 1080p card. If you want 1440p, you need to spend money around the $500 range. 450 to 600 plus. If we're talking like Nvidia, you're going to be bringing the 600 numbers, right? So basically the way I look at it is 1080p gaming is basically anywhere from $250 to $400. 1440p is from like $450 to $650. And then 4K is like all the stuff that's above that. But actually, 4K, there's a gap. Because you can't, like, this GPU right here, which we built this PC with, this 7900 XT, this thing could play the game at 4K with FSR upscaling. But according to them, it's not on the list, right? Like they want you to spend more money for the XTX or the 4080. So they're kind of saying that this is not ideal for this game. So it means that, like, if you want to play at 4K, you need to be ready to spend more than like 1,000, 900 or more, 900 or more for a GPU if you want to play at 4K. And if you want to play at 1440, you need to be ready to spend around like $500. So interesting, 16 gigabyte of RAM is all you need to play modern games. Yeah, I don't agree with that. I really don't agree with that. I don't like that RAM spec. It should be 32 on a lot of these games. But that's what they're saying. They're claiming 16. I think 32 is kind of the minimum myself. I don't like that they put 16. In my opinion, they should have put 16 minimum, 32 for like everything else. The game will take the full 16. Yeah, I'm sure it will. So I'll have to do some testing on that myself. But that's pretty much it for the live stream, guys. Like, I will probably do some content covering this game. Kind of like what I did for Starfield. Because this game is a really nice one. I'm actually going to start using Avatar. Because this game has a built-in benchmark, it's actually very easy to include this game in CPU reviews, GPU reviews. It's a very good game because it's hard. It's like really advanced. It's hard to run, and it has a built-in benchmark. So this is a good one. So I'm definitely going to be using this. I'm going to take one of my older games out of my benchmark list, and I'm going to add this game to my list because this one is a surprisingly good one for benchmarking. It's very good. I don't know how CPU bound it is, but I can definitely do testing in terms of checking for CPU bound scenarios because we've got a lot of different CPUs to test. You know, so no, Forspoken can still be used. Forspoken is good because Forspoken has a built-in benchmark, but Forspoken is so inconsistent with its performance results that I don't actually like using it for comparing hardware, if that makes sense. The fact that you can literally get different results in Forspoken just based off of your SSD, that is really bizarre. So that's for that reason we're not going to use that for benchmarking. Because, like, I'll tell you guys, like, literally using a Gen 5 SSD results in higher frames per second in Forspoken. Same thing with Gen 4. Like, you use Gen 4 or Gen 5 with Forspoken, you get better FPS than if you use a SATA SSD or like a Gen 3 SSD or even a hard drive. So, I mean, that to me, it's too unpredictable. Not going to use that. You have tested with 4090, 6900 XT, and 70 or 770 LE. Is there any way to get a used by just a, what do you mean? What? I don't understand what you mean. What's the question? Is there any way to get a used checked by just a video? Did you see they have hidden settings that are... Yeah, I know. Yeah, I saw that. I watched the Digital Foundry video about Avatar. I thought that was a really good video. But, like, that's the thing, guys. That is the reason why Avatar is the new Crysis. Like, it is the true Crysis replacement. Like, no joke. The game literally has a secret option, a console argument to add in the launch options to enable beyond ultra preset, like unobtainium settings. Is there any way to get a used... Wait, what was the question? Is there any way to get a used... Huh? What was the question? I still don't understand the question. Like, I can check, I can't. Graphics card, sorry for mistake. I don't understand what you're asking. If there's a question. I think he means a used GPU. Is there any way to get a used... You mean like from eBay or something? Oh, from Newegg? I don't know. I don't know. It's well optimized too, very little stutter. Yeah, I think this game is a surprisingly well-made game. Like, I don't think the gameplay is that fun. Like, I can't see myself finishing Avatar. Like I'll be honest with you guys, this is the type of game that I'm going to use for the benchmark more than anything. More than I'm going to actually play the game. Right? Like, this is going to be like... what's that other game that I always use for it? It's kind of like Tomb Raider, Shadow of the Tomb Raider. I never finished Shadow of the Tomb Raider, but I literally always just use the built-in benchmark in Shadow of the Tomb Raider. It's gonna be like that, or Far Cry 6, or Borderlands 3. Those are games that I'll never actually finish ever, but I will use the benchmark, the built-in benchmark. Godfall's another one, you know, like those type of games. You got this game for free. Although I am pretty close to the end of Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Maybe I will finish Shadow of the Tomb Raider, but I'll never finish Far Cry 6. I'll never finish Godfall. Borderlands 3. Like, those are not my style of games, but I will use the built-in benchmark to make a video. Like, you want to buy a used GPU, but can't check it myself. Like, the seller says he can show a video of him recording to show that everything works. If something is wrong with a used GPU just by watching a video of it. There's really, you know, honestly, there's really no... Unfortunately, there's no real way to prove just from the video that it's good. You just have to trust the seller. Unfortunately. I mean, I personally don't buy used GPUs. Like, I'm trying to think, like, do I even have any used GPUs? I don't have any used GPUs. Like, I might buy a, like a refurbished GPU from, like, a store or something. But other than that, I don't think I would buy any used GPU. Unless I'm trying to buy a GPU that's super, super old. Like a vintage piece of hardware. Like, for example, like, I've already jokingly said this on stream in the past. Like, I would buy a GTX 480 off of eBay for, like, $40 or $50, whatever, right? Not to use it. So I don't really care if it works, although it'd be nice if it did work. Just to show that it's a thing of history, you know, just as a collector's item. That's why I would get one. I would not actually use it. So I would never buy a used GPU to actually use the GPU. But that's just me. Like, I understand a lot of people can get great value from buying a used GPU. You just have to make sure that the seller that you're buying it from is a trustworthy seller. Ideally, somebody who has a lot of positive feedback from previous customers. The CPU requirements are wrong, by the way, since this... oh. Yeah, I've tested the game on Threadripper. Like, I was running the Avatar game on the Threadripper, like, yesterday. Or maybe 2 days ago. And, yeah, it works fine. I can't tell if it's CPU bound. It's definitely, like, GPU bound, though, because I'm testing 4K resolution. So I tested 4K native. I tested 4K native FSR. What is it? They have a lot of settings. It's like biased, resolution, 4K output, FSR3 with frame gen, FSR3 without frame gen, quality preset, ultra quality preset. So quality preset is basically 1440p. Ultra quality preset is some other weird resolution between 4K and 1440. So I tested those. I did a lot of tests on the 3090 Ti, and then I tested a lot of runs with the XTX. So I'm probably going to test. I'm probably going to test the game with this one with the 7800X or 7800X 3D. Yeah. I almost lost track of where the CPU is. Yeah, this one over here, guys. Yeah, the one we just built. We're gonna test with this one, and then maybe this one too, because now I've got two X3Ds. So we're gonna do the X3D test. Hopefully that doesn't fall over. Okay, that's not going anywhere. So we're gonna do X3D, and if I do the live stream, it's either gonna be from the X3D, or it's going to be the live stream from this, or it's going to be from this. I'm in the process of trying to figure out what I'm going to actually use as the live stream PC. Because right now, we're using Threadripper to live stream, but I don't know if I'm going to keep it that way. I didn't really plan on using this as this PC, but it seems to be working pretty good for this purpose. So due chance to test those Chinese x86 and GPUs. Where would I get those, though? I think he was asking for... oh. The CPU requirements are wrong. Okay. Oh, is the 7800 that he's selling, is that the reference? Is that the one that I reviewed on the channel? That's a really good overclocker, by the way. That GPU that he's selling is a really good overclocking reference card. I mean, you guys can see my video. Like, I tested overclocking. The card's pretty good. It's the same one I tested. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that one's a good one. Yeah, that's a good overclocker. That one card that he has. He's selling it for $480. Man, I mean, let's put it this way. If I was in the market for a GPU, and if I had not spent like so much money on that third build that I did, I might actually consider buying that as a test GPU. But I mean, that's a good overclocker, but I don't really need another GPU right now, as you guys can imagine. So, yeah, but that's a good one. You doing a live stream on the more threads GPU would be legendary. Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to do my research on that. Yeah, you know why? Because that would be a really cool GPU to test. You know why? Because that is the world's first PCI Gen 5 graphics card. So I want to install that in a Gen 5 slot on any of the AMD boards that have Gen 5. I mean, even the Intel one that I have has Gen 5. So I could do it with the Intel as well. But yeah, like I could test... look in GPU Z, does it actually say, like, it's PCI Gen 5 on the slot? The GPU is capable of Gen 5? Does it actually run at Gen 5? So that would be an interesting piece of hardware to play around with, just to test. Interesting. Alright guys, well that's probably going to be it for this live stream. I might go in the Discord here in a little bit after the stream. I need to take a break. So we did the build. I have to figure out where I'm going to put all these PCs, because now we've got like this one right here with the X3D, the 7800. I have the 7950 X3D over there on the floor. We have, you guys might have noticed right here behind me is the Fractal Torrent case. This thing has the actual streaming PC, the 7950X is in there with the Sapphire Nitro XTX. So that is what I normally live stream with, but it's currently been displaced because of Threadripper. So I'm going to have to figure out what I'm going to do with all these PCs. So now we have this as well. So it's like now there's another one. This will probably become the test bench PC, because it's like I could just keep this case, but just permanently have the front panel or the side panel removed. Next week I'll build. No, next week we're not building another one, Marcelo. Unfortunately, no. As much as people like these kind of build live streams, I don't have enough hardware to keep building PCs. No, this is gonna be the last one for a while. Unless like a family member or somebody wants me to like upgrade their PC and they're okay with me like filming me do the build or something like that, maybe. But other than that, no. We're gonna be back to our regular scheduling. As of next week, starting next week. So anyway, guys, thank you all for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Thanks.